Kia ora, and welcome to the Drum and Bass YouTube Live Masterclass. Hopefully you were there on the pop one we did last week. So now we're going to dive into drum and bass with Jeremy Glenn from The Upbeats, Tom Lee from Lee Matthews, and Elliot from Next Level Productions. Okay, so like anything, this is brought to you by the Music Production Guild of Aotearoa, and I'm going to just turn the dings off on my phone just for politeness because I'm popular. We're an organisation for people in the production industry, and you can join us and you get support with things like advice on your careers. If you join up as a full member, you get $1,500 worth of contracts for mixing, production and session musicians. You get free software, you can win a whole load of prizes, and you can come along to various parties around the country and also get the mix assist that we do, where if you're getting stuck on a mix, you can send it through to us and we'll get an expert to give you some advice. So extra thanks for this one tonight is to Next Level Production, of which Elliot is a member, who are sponsoring this with their super cool packs for serum and sample packs. I've been starting to play around with them today and they're really good. And turn off the beeps, Chris. So they're going to be giving us some packs to give away at the end of the thing. That's right, isn't it, Elliot?
Correct, yes.
Yes, so I'll let Elliot do the draw. Basically, the more you chat on the group chat on the side, the more likely you are to win. So, basically, get involved. So I suppose we're going to start off standard way we do. We'll get everyone to do an introduction for themselves. And Jeremy, do you want to go first? Give us a rundown on you and what you're about. Probably unmute yourself first. Oh yeah. Cool.
Jeremy here from The Upbeats and Body Ocean. I've been producing electronic music for a long time, 28 years. Professionally for like 23, 24 years as The Upbeats, and have done a bit of production done some film score and game trailer stuff, and produced for Shapeshifter and a couple of others. So yeah, got a reasonably broad experience, work both in Logic and Bitwig, and that's about me.
Cool. Okay, Tom, do you want to tag in next?
Yeah, my name's Tom. I'm one half of Lee Matthews, and I've been producing since 2012. So that's 14 years now. God, when you think about it. Trying to catch you there, brother. So I would say I've been doing it professionally since I think around 2017. I went to Mains Music and Audio Institute of New Zealand, which is sadly no more. Studied there for 3 years and got myself a degree in music production and audio engineering. And then I taught at the school for about 2 years as well in DJ and electronic music production. I kind of freelance, sort of teaching, a little bit of mentoring, mixing, mastering and stuff for other people. And I write music as Lee Matthews as well, and play some shows and have a bit of fun. And other than that, that's me.
Cool.
Oh, and I use Ableton Live as well.
Cool. Okay, do you want to go, Elliot?
Yeah, cool. My name's Elliot Wardle. I'm one half of In Motion, which is a recent project I started with Connor Till, who you might know as Sly Chaos. And I've been producing for 15 years since 2011 and haven't really done anything with my production until sort of started with Connor last year. But kind of honed my skills over that time, over the 15 years. And then recently, just after starting with Connor, had the opportunity to start Next Level Production with Briggsy. And that's been going really well. And we sort of teach and mentor students from beginners to, very advanced sort of production skills. And yeah, we make a lot of digital products like sample packs and presets and all that good stuff. And I also use Bitwig as well.
Cool. Okie Dokie. So I suppose we might as well start off just talking about drum and bass and what makes it special in particular for production, if that's cool with you guys. It is, to my mind, one of the highest production level styles on the planet, and it really leads the way. So, you see a lot of techniques that come through from it that end up in other genres years later. And, they're the real techie nerds doing the production for it. So I know, Jeremy, as our sort of most senior member, do you want to just talk about drum and bass, maybe some of the styles or how you see it in relation to production and what's special about it?
It's definitely one of, if not the most demanding kind of technical levels of production, where a lot of the focus goes on the mix and sound design. Almost more focus goes on that than it does on the songwriting a lot of the time. And it's highly competitive, and that's part of what's made it continue to kind of lead the way for so long, is because our community of producers just constantly push each other to like outdo each other with this sound design, with loudness, with all of that stuff. And yeah, I mean, it has inadvertently kind of led to what turned into dubstep and a lot of what like UKG stuff is now, and even like EDM and stuff like that. They're all drawing inspiration from what a lot of like leading drum and bass producers have been doing. So like, even if you talk to any big producer outside of drum and bass, they will look to, your Noisia, your Subfocus, your Pendulum as the dons of production, basically. So yeah, it kind of, I think that in itself says a lot for what drum and bass, the power of drum and bass as a production medium.
Yeah. And I think as well as a genre, it's been it's something that is always ahead of the curve. It's consistently moving, and it's definitely one of those, as you sort of alluded to, Jeremy, where it's like, if your sonics aren't necessarily hitting, you can have a great song, but it just doesn't stand up with the rest of the paddock, shall we say.
Totally.
Which creates a really cool environment and attracts a lot of nerds, which I count myself as one.
You basically have to be
you have to be a nerd. Yeah. And I think one of the funny things I found when teaching at Mains, and sort of going over drum and bass production, I think people would get excited about the music because they were like, oh my god, I love this stuff, it's great. And then you'd open up Serum and you'd start talking about EQ and all that sort of stuff, and people would just like, you'd see their eyes just gloss at this point, and they'd just be like, no, this is actually not for me. This is not my bag.
Yeah.
And you can't hide in drum and bass, you can't hide from it.
Cool. Elliot, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I pretty much exactly what these guys said. Like, it's such a, like, at the end of the day, like, for me personally, it's such a, I don't know, listening to D&B is such a fast-paced music, and it's got that technical side to it that just is such a release of like dopamine. I don't know, for me, it's just like all about that. But yeah, the technical side is absolutely, like, that's something that just blew my mind from a production perspective, and really what made me commit to kind of focusing in and honing in on drum and bass, just that the technical challenge of all that stuff. It's super exciting to me.
Yeah, and it does seem from my perspective to be a really good community of people, supporting each other. Just being on the NZ production Discord with the drum and bass thing, and how much interaction and really open active assistance, and it seems to obviously really help with a style as technical as drum and bass, where as Elliot and I were talking about earlier, it's really hard to try and work all those techniques out by yourself. You're probably not going to do it.
Yeah.
So the more people you can really communicate with, the better. I mean, that's true across the board in production, but I think drum and bass really recognizes that to a really extreme level.
I think also what's played into that is that for a really long time, drum and bass has been like a real underdog in commercial dance music. And so because of that, we haven't had the same level of kind of egos and elitism and stuff that kind of have separated other scenes. Like, we've heard this so many times. We would go to venues, and particularly in Europe. In New Zealand, it's a very close scene, so it's kind of a moot point. But in Europe, where it'll be drum and bass night, and the venue manager's like, we've never seen it like this. Every other style of music, all of the green stage rooms, backstage, like, no, there's no intermingling. It's not social. Whereas in drum and bass, because we're a small little like underdog community, I think there's this sense of camaraderie that's come from that, and that's really fed into the thing of there being a community around the producers, and there being a lot of back and forth, and people being quite open to talk about what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think isn't it latest IMS data said it's like the third biggest dance genre now. Afro House is just at number 4, but it's
in the last 5 to 10 years.
And in Aotearoa, I'd say it's definitely in the top 2, if not number 1. For festival type stuff. So it's yet again, I suppose there's a natural thing with our country that drum and bass is a natural fit. So it's cool. So with our general thing, should we start getting into some production stuff and start off with drums? And start off with the basics, of how to get the power. And they said drum and bass drums are quite particular and have such a high production level. So I mean, Elliot, as a person that makes sample packs as well, and as I saw today, really has a really deep knowledge of some of that stuff. Do you want to start off talking about drum production for drum and bass?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think like I've been producing for a while, but like when I downloaded a plugin that really like accelerated my learning when it came to specifically drums. But it's a plugin called Vision 4X, and it's absolutely unreal. It's like it's kind of like an X-ray scan of what's actually going on, and so I think just looking at what other people are doing. So like for me, it was like Mephius, Hamon, Crooked. Like how the hell are they making stuff so loud, so clean, and just like really like in Vision, you can zoom right in on the oscilloscope to see like what the waveforms are doing and like get a level of granularity that you just could never get before. And it's just I think that would be probably a massive tip if you want to accelerate the learning. Just understanding kind of how to manipulate your plugins in order to kind of achieve the sounds that you want within those, from other producers that you like, is a huge tip.
Yeah. Who else wants to chime in on drums to start up?
I mean, I'll totally agree with Elliot there. I'm personally not onto Vision yet, but like I use a bunch of other analyzers, and I think one of the things that I've learned over time, especially when it comes to drums, is literally just being able to look at a waveform and your eyes being able to understand and identify what's a transient, what's the body, and what is the tail of, say, a kick and or a snare, and then understand, like, if you're looking at your own kick and or snare, how it relates to that. Is your transient matching up? Is it longer? Is it shorter? What's going on with the body, the tail? How is that comparing to, your, say, reference track as well? And so I think referencing is in drum and bass is so key, and there's arguments for referencing only after you've done the creative side of things for sure, but I think using that to ensure that you're hitting the mark is a big piece.
Nice. Jeremy, what thoughts do you have?
I'd agree with all those points, although don't do so much referencing, but it's definitely, particularly for getting an understanding of how things should kind of sit, as Elliot was saying, it's a great way to go about it. But there's also loads of different ways to slice that pie, to approach drums and drum and bass. Like, there are people that synthesize everything from scratch. You can do it there are a bunch of different plugins that you can create your drums from scratch, or there are still people that just use breakbeats. There are people that just use splice samples, and all of these things are totally cool. It's just figuring out what makes sense to you, because there is a finesse. Like, if you're synthesizing or creating everything yourself and you have that control and doing it in Superior Drummer or Contact or whatever it is you use, that's cool because you can keep it as precise as you want. But it is also then quite hard to get a lot of personality into drums, and learning how to layer like your synthesized drums, and then also something that has a bit of flavor, like a break or a sample that's a little bit crusty, where you want to get that personality. Learning how to layer those things so that the transients stay really clean, and you have, you know, the body coming through, and some of that almost like the happy mistakes that you get from distorting a break or something like that. Like learning how to gel that stuff together is a really, really important part in making drums funky and interesting and have flavor. And that's the very first thing. Like if I'm listening through promos, when I'm listening to stuff to DJ, the very first thing I hear are the drums. If the drums are whack, I'm not interested. It's like next tune.
Yeah.
So, and that was like, this is a great example. When we started producing, when we first sent our music out to people to get feedback and to look, hopefully sign something, there was a legendary producer called Digital that heard our music and was like, you guys have great ideas, but you need to work on your drums. And he was like, just focus on drums. He sent us a DVD full of breakbeats and was like, just focus.
In the post.
In the post.
Far out.
And honestly, to this day, I think that advice stands true. Like, if your drums are banging, if your drums are on, everything else should kind of fall into place, because you have to learn so much about how things mix and sit and flow and back and forth with drums, that if you can nail that, the rest of it should almost be like a walk.
Yeah.
And that's what I find a lot when you see producers outside of drum and bass have a crack at making drum and bass. You're like, man, this is a banging tune, but the drums are really, really not sitting right.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's, I suppose, the thing, as you said, the technicality of drum and bass, it does take such a headspace and pure amount of time and sitting and talking with people on that side of things. I mean, the tricks that Elliot showed me today on drums were really useful as you know, someone who dabbles a bit on drum and bass but mainly works on other styles. And yeah, so I suppose anyone keen on that, as you said, take Jeremy's and Tom's advice on really getting those drum sounds locked.
I was actually just going to jump in one last thing. Like I kind of like more of a mix thing, but just separating, like, I don't know if you guys do the same, but having like your drums as their own thing, their own group. I never have anything on the like the group, so I don't process the drums as one. Like they're all kind of running to the pre-master, and then everything else is kind of sidechained to those drums, and then they're kind of put into a limiter. I feel like the separation in terms of mix really creates like quite a nice, like you get really nice transients from it. Just the separation is quite desirable.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go into that kind of nerd door speak, yeah, I think I'll have generally, like, I've got an entire drum group where I've got like kick and snare. I don't really put too much on my drum buses, to be fair. And then I've got kick and snare, and then basically everything that's not those just falls into a group called tops. And obviously if you've got fills and stuff, they might go in a separate group, but I'll typically even put like the tiniest, shortest sidechain on all my tops, so that there's just like the very, very front end of the transients are getting cut off for the kick and snare. And then pretty much I'll have all my other sounds. Sometimes I don't do this with vocals, and I won't. Sometimes don't do it with effects. I don't like them necessarily bouncing too much. Whereas, kick every other sound, sub, synth, it's all just going and getting sidechained. And and I'll feel like I don't run all of them then through into a limiter myself, but it'll just depend on the sound if it needs pushing, but then everything's going and running through clippers and limiters on my like master bus anyway. So yeah, Jeremy.
We'd have everything, all the drums go through a drum bus traditionally, although I've kind of, the way that I do it now in Bitwig is a little bit separate, where I'll have like a percussion group, a hats or tops group, and then kick and snare, and then that'll all go within, be processed together in a bus, which will generally just have a little bit of saturation, like often use the black box distortion thing, just very gently, and then going into a clipper, which is generally the newfangled saturate.
I love the black box. It's such a good plugin. That just like sits on my master, and I'll just put that saturation up just like 10% ish, see how it feels. And then I quite like the air function on it as well. It's quite nice.
Totally.
Nice.
A little lift.
Yeah. So when you're doing all the ducking from your drums, you said you're doing it with kick and snare. And what are you using to, what's that triggering? Any particular plugins you choose?
I use Shaperbox 3. And then this next one is a little shout out, Elliot. I use the Convolver as well by Kilohertz. And yeah, so I think the majority of the sidechain is being done by Shaperbox. And then I'll put the kilohertz after it and literally just set that mix amount to like 30-40%. I know the majority of it's being done, but I guess it's nice to have a bit of a blend. And when you're like, I swear something's happening. I swear it's making a difference. We'll just say that it is. But yeah, the majority of the work's being done by Shaperbox 3.
Yeah, and are you doing frequency dependent ducking with that, or broadband?
No, so that's literally just with the Shaperbox. You can see can we share screen during this? Is that helpful, or?
Yeah, we've never done it before, but
too long. I mean, it'll take me 5 seconds. So just give me a moment. So anyway, pretty much it has like an oscilloscope that will show me the sample, and while that's sort of playing through, I can see the length of it, which is obviously very, very important. And so that way I can see the length of the entire kick drum, and when I can see the length, I can then decide just how much of the signal I want to scoop out. And obviously we can say with a kick drum that the low end is going to be the entirety of the kick. And then that's going to be just on the low band. And then on the mid band, you're going to scoop, say, not quite as much. And then on the top end, you'd literally just wanting to take out the transient, in my opinion anyway. And that seems to do the trick. I will just get this going really quickly.
Yeah, well, Tom lays it up. I'm just going to say hi to Soon. I got to tell the music industry 2-yearly Huia about your guys' stuff the other day. So they asked us to say what music from a local band we'd been hearing. So, got to tell them about you, which was nice. So, yeah. How you going, Tom?
Cool. Yeah, got it up and running. So
see if it works.
You may need to give me permission, Chris, and I will just send a request.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Allow.
Cool. And share sound, very important one to tick. Can we all see?
Yeah, we got it.
Lovely stuff, and it's on Zoom audio device. So, I mean, it's just a kick drum, really, but can we all hear that?
Yeah.
Lovely. It's clipped, so it sounds a little distorted. So yeah, here's my Shaperbox here, and you can see band-wise, we've got low, mid, and high. And then if I press space, you can see the length of the sample. Admittedly, this one's probably a little bit long. I just dragged it in. But I can then make sure that the low band is scooping out for the entirety of the kick. Then on the mid band, I could use, say, more of a modest sort of sidechain, just going off like there. And if I wanted to, I could audition just the mid frequencies and get really nerdy on it and like ensure that we're just scooping out those mids specific to this band. And then for the high frequencies, literally just nice and tight on the transient there. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. And I mean, I imagine it would be pretty similar for you guys.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, very, very similar. The only changes that I have is instead of using Shaperbox, I'll use Compactor. So ring mod sidechain, just because it's the most precise. And I'll also, actually, I wonder if I can. Is that similar for you, Jeremy? I wonder if I can share my screen.
Let's find out.
Do you do multi-band with the compactor as well, and just set it up as?
So I do multi-band with a free plugin called Crossover, but it's linear phase, so it goes on everything. So if you imagine I've got drums and everything else, and that linear phase crossover just ensures that the phase is undisturbed. and then I'm scooping it on the low band, which is up to maybe like 400 hertz or something. I'm scooping the compactor's like quite slow, like the Reese, but it's scooping out the lows, and then on the highs, it's doing its own ducking. So basically, the idea is that you're completely clearing
because
and you're getting on the high end. Like
that's what I was going to argue with the compactor, is that it's like the release control of it sometimes felt to me that, like, especially with longer kick samples, that it felt a bit draggy, even if you had the release set to 0.
Yeah, so to solve that problem, that's the way around it. Is you kind of like you analyze, you get it to sidechain to the kick, but like on 2 different parts. It's looking at the low end and the way I've got it set up means that I never have to touch any curves. Like right out of the gate, I never need to worry about sidechaining. I just put whatever kick sample I'm using in there, whether it's my own or from a sample pack. I just send it into my kick sidechain, because of the way ring mod works, it's like just looking at whatever sample is in there and doing a perfect duck every time. And so I never have to worry about it. And if I ever wanted like a pump, I'd call that like more creative sidechain, and then I'd put that in intentionally rather than like I kind of view there's 2 types of sidechaining, which is like creative sidechain and like mix sidechain. So the mix one lives in the template, and then the creative sidechain is done intentionally when I decide to, want something to pump.
And that's quite cool with the splitting of the 3 bands, because then obviously each convolver is listening to the length of however long that signal is. Then you're getting, I guess it's split perfectly, and you're not getting the drag that I was talking about.
Exactly that. It solves that problem basically.
Yeah, nice.
Nice. Jeremy, you got any other thoughts on any of this side of things?
No, I mean, basically this is all the same stuff that we do. The only thing is I can't do, like with the compactor, as far as I'm aware, I can't do that in Logic, but I can do it in Bitwig with the multiband like splitting.
Is that the crossover plugin? Is that a freebie, Elliot, or do you have to pay for
Yeah,
it?
it's free. Yeah, it's a freebie. I'll try.
That sounds great.
Yeah, no, it is good. I'll try and find a link or something.
Isn't there?
Cool.
Is the native one in Bitwig linear phase as well?
Which one? Which one is that?
There are multiple like frequency. Is there?
I think it was in the. I have a feeling I know what you're talking about. There is one. I actually haven't tried that one, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because
I hadn't used it for this case because I wasn't sure if it was linear phase, but knowing that the other one's linear phase means that I would consider try.
the way that I do it in Ableton is just with that the Pro Q on split bands, and then just put all of those on linear phase.
Yeah.
And then it seems to do the same trick. But are you saying yours is already like there is a Bitwig splitter?
Yeah, but I'm not.
Yeah, there definitely is. Yeah.
Nice.
I've just shared that link, by the way, Chris, if you want to share that to the chat. That's the crossover. I'm actually not sure if that's Bitwig unique. I don't know. I don't think it is, but there's a version. There's like a specific Bitwig version that's all mapped and everything. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
I need to grab that.
Yeah, look, it looks Bitwig unique.
Cool.
I don't know. I think VST. I think it is just a VST. So it should load wherever, but it works in a bit of a weird way, like not like a usual plugin.
Cool. Sorry, I'm just dropping the thing over.
I'll talk to you about this afterwards.
Yeah.
So I'm like, does the plugin have to then be multi-out? Do you have to split the outputs to 3 different?
Yes, it does, Jeremy. Yes, it does have multi-out. Yeah, exactly.
Which is a little bit of pain, but
it is. But that's the thing. You only set it up once. You never have to set it up again. Well, that's why I've got it. I've just got it on the everything bus.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe just quickly do a talk about putting breaks into your, how you approach breaks in your mixes, and maybe layering of drums, things like that, and before we jump onto breaks?
That's something that we come from a geriatric period in drum and bass where breaks is the only thing that drum, and we still are really aesthetically. I'm still really drawn to the sound of like old recorded organic drums layered on top of really nice, clean, modern transients. And the trick of that is getting them to sit naturally so that you want the feel, you want the messiness, like sometimes like little noise before the snare, before the clean snare, but it's getting that stuff to sit just right. It's such a pain in the ass. And that's where I think using Bitwig or using Ableton or using Cubase is actually really good, because if you do an audio, it's really accurate. in Logic it's not quite so easy. So we end up resampling everything, and which traditionally was done in EXS, but now it's just sampler, I think is what it's called. So cut everything, resample it to MIDI so that we can replay it as MIDI, and then generally 9 times out of 10 we'll scoop most of the body out of it, and it'll just be distort it to death, and then it'll just be the top character that we're looking for that we layer over the generally simple, clean kick, snare, hats, and then have a ragged break that is just sitting on top that just gives you that sense of personality and sense of excitement.
And you're doing lots of layering of snares and tuning them and all that side of things?
Yeah, tuning's the other big thing, is like anytime you're doing that, because generally nowadays everything is tuned. Kicks a little bit harder, but snare is always tuned to whatever the track is, and so the break has to be as well, because otherwise then it's going to get sloppy if the phase is out because it's not tuned right. So you need to make sure that your break is tuned to the snare. And I can't remember what the other part of the question was, but tuning is definitely a big
cool.
part of it.
And layering, do you often using one snare or using 5 or 6? Or I mean, obviously it depends to an
Generally, often 1 or 2, but then sometimes you've got a really nice body and you're like, this is hitting where I want it to, but doesn't quite have the presence that I'm after, so you have a layer on top that, it's kind of very much a situational thing. There's no one size fits all for that.
That's very, very true. Yeah. And I think when I first started making drums, I think a while ago, the older advice was to layer. And it was just like, throw everything on top, more is better. Yeah. And then I think more and more now I go to like, just as almost as simple as possible. And especially if you've got all those parts that I was talking about before, transient body, tail, and everything sort of happening nicely. I feel like too many layers can you're just stacking up phase issues, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that the most layering that I probably do, or stacking of stuff, is always going to be on the tail, on the latter end, so that your impact and your snap that part has taken place, everything's hunky-dory, and then the kind of air candy style part can definitely be, you can get away with a lot more on the back end of that.
Yeah.
One thing that I've been doing when I'm layering stuff is actually using the compactor. So if I've got like my core sort of like punchy drums and then I want to layer a kind of a break or something on top, I'll ring mod sidechain the break to the original thing, and it just, I don't know, it's instead of like layering on top and like adding frequencies, it just cuts through like perfectly, but you get all the bits that you like of the break but perfectly cut out to the original thing, and it just sounds super clean. And if you're familiar with compactor, I literally just have everything on 0, so it's like there's no delay, it's sample by sample accurate. It's sounds super crispy.
Yeah, I'm essentially doing the same thing with like just shaper boxing the break, just like I do my instruments and subs. And then I think probably the one thing that I change is just the curves a little bit, just where I want a little bit more of that drum to pop through, as opposed to it all being chopped off. And then I think that's where setting your bands up correctly and being like, here's the highs, this is the very short part, and then the mids, and wanting more of that character coming out rather than just chopping it all off. And I think even sometimes like playing around with the mix controls, so it's not like 100% everything's getting cut, can really help.
Also creatively with drum layering, something that we have used a bit in the past and use occasionally now, is with the tops, like with hats, cymbals, is we'll often have them going to their own bus and having the kick. You can do this without actually sending the kick, but often it doesn't quite sound as convincing, as I'll have the kick signal sent to the tops bus, then having that distorted and then rolling the bottom out of it, so you don't hear the kick, but the tops pump instead of
yes. I've actually been doing a lot of that with even just like distortion, like kind of processing on bases.
It's actually really good for it, because instead of having to send the kick, you can just do essentially use distortion with a sidechain signal. So you can
Yes, and being able to even like map that to like, you know, stuff that's not audible in the mix is really, really fun.
Yeah, totally.
I'm seeing a bunch of questions come through on the YouTube thing, Chris.
Yeah, do you want to? Yeah, we're just looking those
I
up.
don't want to I don't want to derail where we are in the conversation, as some of them kind of sort of pertain to other things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write them down in a notes.
Okay. Yep.
And then we can maybe chat about them at the end.
Yeah, great. Yep. Cool.
I'm sorry, one quick question, because we've talked about it a lot. From memory, is the compactor free or not?
Yes, free.
Yeah, right.
Download the whole kilohertz pack right now if you haven't already.
So good.
Okay, cool.
So
Because I was going to say, otherwise there's RMSC is a free plugin as well.
Cool.
Yeah, and if you're on Ableton, there's one called Araska Sidechainer as well, which is also free, which is amazing.
That's just another ring mod one, isn't it, Elliot?
Yeah. But it actually does. Actually, Tom, you'd probably love that. It's got ring mod and Shaperbox basically built into one thing. It's a super lightweight plugin. It's kind of built. It's built within Max for Live, so it runs natively to Ableton. It's
okay.
super, amazing.
Nice. Cool. Shall we jump onto bass now and all the other parts associated with that for our next stage? So
yeah, this is going to be a long conversation, this whole chat.
Yeah,
we're just scratching the surface of everything.
Yeah,
as well.
I'm sure everyone's finding it good.
Yeah.
Who wants to start about bass production and their approaches to it within, or discuss the different styles of subgenres of drum and bass and how they deal with bass? Or
Tom's turn to lead the charge.
Yeah, I think Jeremy said something before about there are so many different ways to skin the cat, and I think it also depends on what your intention is when you're starting to write the tune. Are you writing like something that is intended to rip people's heads off? Because then I think that pertains to more of just like a pure sound design session where you're trying to create something a little bit unique, something that sonically just is really strong. And I think that's where, at least for me, when I'm doing something along those lines, it's sort of starting off with really solid foundations in terms of sonics, and just trying to excuse the language, fuck around and find out, basically, with that. And then I think once something catches your ear and you feel like you've got something exciting and interesting, I think that's where you kind of follow your nose, Gandalf, really, with that. Like, you just keep sort of going down that path until you sort of strike something. Whereas if you're writing more of a song, it's more of a song form tune, it's probably less about, potentially creating something that's going to rip someone's head off, and more about developing a bass that, I guess, complements the main idea of the tune. And then, that's all looks very different. But for me personally, everything's done on Serum, really. Every now and again, I dabble with Ableton's Operator. You can get some cool, weird stuff out of that. And then, I'll preset hop on Contact every now and again if I'm really stuck. But other than that, just have a hack and have a go. And then I think doubling back to what Elliot spoke about before in terms of like looking what your heroes and inspirations are doing as well. Maybe not necessarily for ideas, but for sonics, like how loud is my sub bass? How does the mid range feel? Is there enough transient on this particular section? How wide is it? How does it collapse to mono? All of that kind of stuff needs to be sort of taken into consideration. So it's a long one.
Yeah, and often, Tom, when you're working in Serum for your sort of bass sound, you're often taking out the bottom fundamental and then using a sine wave separately. Is that something you did it once?
Pretty much. But then I think it's sort of again, it depends on the tune and what you want to be doing with the bass. Say the sound, you can sometimes achieve a solid sub foundation within one patch. Sometimes you just end up destroying it, and so that there's literally the low end just becomes completely weak. Therefore, you need to replace it with something stronger. It kind of just depends. And then, sometimes you can go pretty far down the road with it, feel like you're all right, and then end up doubling back or replacing it, and then realizing that it's a bit stronger with how you had it originally. And then other times, I think, and this is where we can talk about like distortion and clipping and harmonics and whatnot. You can be generating a bass and it's got these decent low end harmonics, and that's where you might just chuck a sign at the bottom and call it a day. Or you might be trimming the bottom end of that particular bass. And sometimes that might be quite high, up to 150, 200-ish hertz, and then be filling that all in with harmonics from the sub. And that can be achieved by either adding that within the patch or clipping and distorting as well. So there's, a bunch of different ways to skin the cat there.
Nice. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on all that?
As Tom was saying, it's really depends on the track and what you're trying to achieve. But we, like Tom, do 99% of our bass and mid patches in Serum. Generally, like traditionally, we would just flick through presets. Like the way that we probably a lot of our most well-known bass sounds would have just been us flicking through presets, finding something interesting, probably changing a little bit, and then just distorting the living shit until it sounded exciting. We don't do that so much anymore because you don't have as much control when you do that, and it often ends up like the way that mixes are now, like modern drum and bass mixes, you've generally got to everything has to fit within its right place, and the more distortion you generally put on something, the more kind of errant harmonics you're going to end up with that can be quite hard to control and quite hard to keep things clean. So generally, more and more these days, we try to be a little bit more intentional with our sound design. So getting the sound within Serum to actually sound pretty solid before we then have to go and mess it up. And I think part of that comes also with having, when you're approaching your mid and bass sound design stuff, is having a bit more of an understanding of synthesis and of what, like how you can get your results out of FM and AM and bass distortion within Serum now. Like you legitimately wouldn't have to use any third-party plugins. You could just do everything in Serum. But there are some things that you just can't help but go back to. And beyond that, it's in terms of bottom end, like generally the more distortion we end up putting on our bass sound, the more likely we're going to have to roll the bottom out of it and have the clean bottom end, just to make sure that it really punches through. But like for a long time, that would be we would do that without even thinking about it. It was just like by default we would have the bottom end separate. Whereas now that we're being a little bit more intentional with the design of things, more and more we're finding that actually the natural bottom end in the patch, provided we don't have to do too much to it, is actually pretty good. And if you can get the original patch to the bottom end to still be good within it, it's also sounds quite natural, because if you're having to use a secondary sub to replicate what the bass line's doing, if you want it to replicate it, it can be quite hard to get it to feel movement to feel natural with what's going on with the original patch. And so,
especially if it's jumping around a lot, I think that's where you sort of run into more issues. If you're literally having a sub note that it's just going brrr, then you're kind of fine. Whereas like if it's jumping up and down and a bit more chaotic, then you're 100% right there, Jeremy.
But that's where also one thing that we do quite a lot, if we do need to clean up the bottom end and want to separate it, is we'll just like duplicate the patch. So we have the Serum patch with all of the modulation, all the LFOs and movement and all of that stuff, and we'll duplicate it, and then just like generally quite often it'll be like, a saw and some other stuff creating all of the noise. Duplicate the patch, remove all the post-processing, and just turn it into a sine and have the modulating either the volume of the sine or a filter, and just keep it super simple. And that can be a way that it can can mimic it quite nicely.
And sometimes they're like, I won't even like just depending on how weak and or strong it is, I won't even actually like just turn it to a sine. Just kind of leave the whatever the bottom waves were as they were, and then and that's where you can play off where you sort of cutting each one, saying okay, I'm going to chop this one here and then leave the kind of low harmonics of these initial weird waves because I kind of like the character of them, and set that at certain points. And then sometimes it might be a bit weak, but there are a lot of things that you can do to bring out that low end if you want. Like with things like R-Bass, like that plugin that you mentioned before, Chris, to just get those like nice sub harmonics popping through, and whatnot. So yeah, you can do a lot there to kind of bring it up.
Also, sorry,
as well.
before I hand the baton over to you, Elliot. One of like creatively in terms of bass, like traditionally, one of the things that we've done a lot without using way too much distortion, is traditionally when you think of modulating, like when you think of putting a filter and modulating it on a bass patch, you put a low pass on. But what we would quite often do is we would run a high pass that flicks up. And so if it's running into quite hot distortion, like we use the D16 stuff quite a lot, the Devastor is awesome for this, is if you have a high pass flicking up, the distortion will just blow the sound out when the bottom comes out, and all of this other information will come in. So that's one of the ways that we end up getting a lot of the movement, is instead of having a low pass, we just have a high pass before distortion. And sometimes then also a high pass and a little bit of reverb coming up before distortion to give it, like, to make it really morph when it opens up.
I think that's where you have to really think about signal chain and what's happening beforehand and how that can kind of create really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I'll find at the moment in terms of patches kind of behaving a little bit differently. I'll say you are, and this is like, especially with say like Shaperbox, Jeremy, and that kind of using the distortion envelope model on that. If you've got your patch and that's just running hot as super loud, and it's going straight into that distortion module, you're not going to get much nice movement out of it. Whereas like if you've got a lower level and you're kind of using that envelope shaper to kind of kick up some sort of movement out of it, you can get some cool stuff happening. Then, you're adding, say, a multitude of effects, filters, reverbs, etc. before those distortions, and then you're absolutely smashing that stuff afterwards. You can get some really cool creative results.
Totally.
Cool. What were those distortion plugins again, Jeremy?
So we use all of the D16 stuff quite a bit, but particularly the Devastor 2. Sorry. It just has loads of personality, kind of, old school sounding distortion unit that is quite good at ragging things.
Cool. Elliot, do you want to have a jump in on approaches to bass production?
Yeah. Well, so the way that I look at bass production is I kind of look at it like I'm from the ground up really. So I'm looking at when I'm designing sounds, I'm trying to get the low, like the fundamental done first, and then thinking about the sort of next, second, third, fourth harmonics and whatever, and just what they're doing, because that's, if you can get those moving right and all that, you've got like half the battle's done. And then the trick is when you start distorting that, it can fly out, that you can go way too far. So the way that I kind of combat that is by, generally my rule of thumb is I will limit, like really softly limit the sub frequency. So probably like around 400, 500 hertz is all kind of limited, so that nothing's like distorting. There's no like high end harmonics being generated. If it does go over, 0, it's kind of being kept down. And then I'll on the sort of top group, and then thinking about how can I use what I've got here to like generate more harmonics. So I'll use stuff like wave folders, and kind of thinking about not trying to clip the sound. So not so much clippers in the mid range, but like wave folders and stuff like that to generate a bit more. And then the generally the rule of thumb as well, the higher frequencies are, the more you can kind of clip the shit out of them really. So you can go absolutely mental. So a trick that I do is I've got like a huge chain that's like, you can run things into the red, into the red, into the red, and then right at the end of the chain, you've got an EQ that's around like 400, 500 hertz. And so now you've got these kind of two layers. One's like a super, super clean sub that never clips, and you've got the benefit of the kind of super distorted, mid high end region, and then you probably put a kind of like a Pro L or a clipper on the end of that. And I've generally found that is a really clean way of ensuring that you get the right sounds. And the last thing I'll add is I'm always kind of looking at, like, tonal balance is such an important thing. Like, this probably feeds into more mixing stuff as well, but just in bass, like, if your ears really like sort of like where pink noise sits, it's not too harsh on the high end. So if you can generally follow like a pink noise kind of curve, you're halfway there. Like, your stuff will sound good, and you can kind of compare it when you're looking at it in EQ. You can kind of see where things dip and scoop and whatever, and it kind of gives you, like, usually what I try and do is just flatten that out, sort of anywhere above like 400 hertz. I'm just trying to, like, dip and boost whatever, depending on whether it's, just to essentially flatten it out. And I found that that's a pretty consistent way of getting decent sounding basses.
I think this is probably a good point to talk on one of those questions that we got asked earlier: clip versus limit, and where do we think we should use those particular tools?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely like I'm high end, like clip. You can clip, so like hats, snares, you can clip that. But anything that's like for me, like kicks, I'll put and I use a really specific limiter, and it's a free one. Again, it's kilohertz limiter. I did like quite a lot of analysis of different limiters and what they were doing to specific sounds. And I found that the kilohertz limiter one was the most transparent, and it was just really good for managing those low end frequencies. And then I literally, if I want to sort of clip something, the newfangled audio one's really good, but usually I just want something that's just, it's high clip or whatever. So I'll just use the kilohertz one, which again is free.
Nice. And then any other examples of where you would use limiters over a clipper?
Anything that I want to kind of, anything like, for example, like vocals, I might chuck a limiter on the top. Like I wouldn't, or a really good example of where I use a limiter is if I've got like a synth group that I don't really want to push in, if I'm going slightly over zero, I don't want to clip those sounds because they're, I want to keep them, I don't want that kind of like crackle that you get with hard clipping stuff. So the limiter just sort of tames those tiny little peaks that go over. And it's really effective on like groups and stuff like that. But I usually bounce between like the kilohertz one and Pro L. And Pro L, if you don't know, is like, you can use it as a limiter, but you can also, it's kind of like a clipper limiter. So depending on where the attack is how much clipping it introduces. And so for that, like I found on basses and stuff like that, there's full frequency, I'll tend to use either clipping or Pro L. And stuff that's mostly low end, so your kicks and like subs and stuff like that, I'll use the kilohertz limiter just for the transparency.
What sort of release time do you use on the kilohertz limiter,
0.
Elliot?
I always use 0. It's for very, very specific things that I'd use like a higher release time, but 90% of the stuff I do is like all the way down 0.
Cool. Bob will be happy with that. Jeremy, what are your thoughts diving into things like clippers?
I'm terrible because I, for the last few years, been working quite a bit with Nick Noisier, and so there are all of these things that I do now just because that's what he does that I don't understand. I'm like, I don't know why he chose to do that, but that's what I do now, because who am I to question Nick?
Who are we to question your methods, bro?
So I will often, like on the master, I will generally kind of test it between running the clipper or running the Pro L in clip mode, and test which one I like sounded. More often than not, these days I end up gravitating towards the newfangled saturate over the Pro L on the master and on the drum bus, on almost everything where I feel like I don't want it to run over. The main time that I'll use limiter nowadays is just kind of if something is almost like just as a compressor, as if something's getting a little bit out of control, like vocals, and I just want to rein things in a little bit. So if you hold, I don't know what it is on PC, but I think if you hold Option turn in the Pro L and turn the gain level up, it'll reduce the
Oh yeah.
level at the same, no, the output level at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you can do some quite kind of easy, transparent leveling through that, and just really control vocals, synths, things that you don't necessarily want there to be like loud pops or transients coming through. That's generally nowadays what I'll use a limiter for.
Yeah, I think probably a good rule of thumb or a way to like think about it is like a clipper is just going to be more aggressive by nature. And so like if you want something to feel a little bit more like angry and a little bit smashed, that's where you're going to lean on a clipper. And then like both of you have said, if you want it to be a little bit more transparent, a little bit less harsh, this is where a limiter comes in, and it's works really, really well.
Yeah, cool. Totally.
And I think I'm using I use K-Clip quite a lot. That's probably like one of my favorites. And I'll use that a lot sort of on my master bus actually. And I sort of feed everything into it, but it literally just doing like 1 to maybe 1.5 to 2 dBs of like reduction. And then I'm sort of like gain level matching it after the fact as well. And then running into a bunch of limiters to sort of finishing off getting the volume on my tune. And then in terms of like sounds, I think like leads and sort of the mid-range of basses just sound fantastic getting smashed in a K-Clip. So yeah, big fan of that.
Cool. Yeah, because I mean you're getting, it's one thing also about drum and bass is the amazing loudness that's coming in all the modern tracks, but being so clear and not just the definition and space in them at the same time is not sounding like totally crushed. Like Tom, that track you sent me through the other week, which was -3 LUFS, but it just sounded pristine and just beautiful. And
I'm sure Elliot's got one that's like -1.
I was telling you about that, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are your approaches to getting it, that loud, say on the track you did, Tom, and the one you did, Elliot?
Yeah, so I mean, I touched on it a little bit before. There's my kind of little mastering chain that I use, and I'll share my screen really quickly. So this is kind of what the basics of it looks like. You've got K-Clip into Ozone Maximizer and then a L2. And before that, I'm putting the Oxford Inflator on, which is this plugin here by Sonox. And then I'm also putting Black Box on, and those two are basically just saturators. And they, give me a little bit more headroom and perceived loudness before everything starts to run into my clipper, and then I run K-Clip. And then pretty much a tiny bit on the Ozone Maximizer, and then our Pro L. And basically my theory along that with the sort of limiters running through is they're not having to work as hard and they're kind of sharing the load. So both of those, in terms of how hard they're working and like in terms of reduction, they're barely taking anything off the top. Because I do find the harder that you push into them, that's where you start to really notice that you've gone a little bit too far. But a lot of the loudness comes from the mix. Like if your mix is crap, it's not going to get there volume wise. And so your sub needs to be sitting in the right place. Your kick and snare need to be sitting in the right place. And then typically from there, it's a heck of a lot easier to make your music louder if there is a lot of mid-range. If you've just got a lot of lows and kind of just not that much mids, it's pretty hard to get it super, super loud without it crunching up pretty quickly, because mids allow you to hide a lot more distortion without it sounding kind of abrasive to the ears. And so you can kind of get away with a lot more. And that's where you find genres like, like more aggressive dubstep or like neurofunk that can just really, really get some like higher levels of LUFS without it sounding terrible, because there's just so much distortion in there already. But yeah, I think it all comes back to the mix, I would say.
Cool. Elliot, what are your approaches for getting your -1 mix?
Yeah, well, 100%. So the way I do it is kind of what I was touching on before, which is just having like separating drums and everything else. and using that like ring mod sidechain thing that's just so precise, so that by the time, like, I also mix everything at 0 dB, and so I use, so I don't know if this is the technical term, but I kind of use like my kick and my snare as like anchors for the mix, and just looking at I mentioned Vision 4X, but looking at what, you know, the people that I was trying to sort of emulate were doing, and looking at sort of where their levels were sitting is kind of, yeah, helped me a lot. But I have a limiter on the master, but I have it turned off. So my template, basically when I'm working, I've got Vision open so I can see when things are kind of going over 0. But just because something's going over 0 doesn't mean it's necessarily a problem. So sometimes I'll just check. And if it's, what I'm looking for is if there's low frequencies, so like sub going over 0, that to me is a problem. But if it's just high end, if it's the odd like offshoot of like little high end bits, I can literally stick a clipper on that, and it's you can't tell the difference. But yeah, I find that like I don't have any master bus. There's nothing there. I'll just use that Pro L thing. But even when that's not off, because of the way the side chaining works, yeah, I don't technically need a limiter. It's very, only the tiny little high end offshoots are going over 0.
That is, you have to have a clean project to do that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I definitely did not work that way. Yeah.
Nice. What approaches do you have on, you know, clippers or just, you know, getting your tracks as loud as, you know, you feel you need to?
Like Tom was saying, I think the mix initially just, it needs to be good, otherwise you're not going to be able to get it loud. Like that's the basic, the fundamental thing. And that's why we spend so much time focusing on getting the mix right, because the loudness at the end point is like a byproduct of that. Everything's sitting in the right place and the balance being right.
Cool. And you're also you continue.
No.
And you're also, the way you structure the tracks and, you know, the actual writing and composition of them helps, of course, as well.
Not with loudness, I would say, no.
Right.
Like, not at all. It's more that's more of like, I guess I would say like the listener experience, and the structure is more, you know, I know we've just talked about sonics for the last hour, but the structure is more what your general listener is going to experience, you know. And then another thing that you also think about when it comes to structure is for DJs as well. That's another thing that we take into consideration a lot, that probably a large number of other genres of music would not even bother with. Whereas, like, you know, for me, if it's annoying for DJs to play and that's hard to mix out of, I'm changing the song. For sure. Unless it's more of a song driven track and I'm like, it's just a Spotify tune, I don't really care if a DJ's going to play it or not. But if it's a DJ tool, then you need to think about the arrangement and how that is going to be convey to a club, I think.
But also, I think particularly with drum and bass versus most other genres, the drum and bass is the way that it's DJ'd is it's double or it's like you're constantly playing it with other songs the DJs play. So it has to be like you're looking to create sounds that are going to stand out in the mix with something else, whether or not it's the main track or whether it's mixed like the top.
And I think also just like sit with other tracks as well. And like one of the big things that I say to a lot of clients when I'm mixing their stuff, I'm like, go and DJ your song, double drop it. And how does it feel? Like, you know, what do you notice when you are listening to that track? What sticks out? What doesn't? What feels like it disappears? And if that's a key element, then we maybe need to relook at how we've approached the mix down, because those parts might not be poking through enough. And that's where it can be really helpful to, you know, if your track is a vocal, not only just be double dropping it together, but to be playing the vocal section over the top of another track, like, and how the vocal comes in. Is the vocal loud enough? Are the synths present enough? Is the synths drowning stuff out? That's where I actually think DJing can be a good mixing reference point as well for your tunes.
Also, on top of that, listening in as many different environments as you can.
Yeah, I think my favorite
speaker in the car, headphone, like,
I think my favorite is actually like my car speakers suck, and I like that they suck because it just really kind of like holds out a spotlight on your tune, like whatever's going on. If like there's something wrong with it, you're gonna hear it in that car for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Nice. How do you guys approach working with vocalists or other musicians using other instruments? You know, do you do a lot of it, or I know Tom, you work with vocalists, Jeremy. Yeah, so
Well, I would say these two guys use different instruments to me. It's Bitwig and Bitwig over here. So
yeah. As a
No.
like bringing in live instrument or live musicians for anything.
Yeah, I've not done too much on the live side with drum and bass. I've definitely recorded and used my fair share in my like other music stuff. But yeah, particularly for me, I think the main thing is just recording vocalists, which I've done my fair share of. I've sort of worked as an engineer out of a studio in Auckland for a couple of years. And yeah, how do I approach it? I think one of my favorite things is to actually just to get to know them as an individual before you actually start working on the track. It's nice to become friends and sort of like get a bit of I guess rapport going before you jump into writing a track. And then I think just trying to bounce ideas off each other. And then what I usually offer myself, I do songwrite, and that's something that I have, I guess, in my sort of wheelhouse. So I kind of offer to them, are you open to writing this together so that we can kind of, bounce ideas back and forth? Some are literally just like, leave me alone and shut me in a room and I'll come out and then we'll work on it. And then others kind of want to back and forth with you. And so it's once again, there are many ways to skin the cat. And then I think it's all just about being there are no bad ideas, I think, is probably a good one, not necessarily just for vocalists as well. I think everyone sort of creating a safe space for everyone to sort of share whatever idea they may come up with, because you might turn your nose up at it initially, but it might be a better idea than yours. So hear everything out.
I think that's a really important point. It's to do with any kind of collaboration, whether it's the vocalist, instruments, or producers, is that creating music is incredibly personal. And so unless you feel like it's a safe space, you're not going to feel free to express yourself creatively. So it's really important that you don't feel like you're being judged on whether or not the thing you're doing is good or not. Like, you have to be able to, even if you're not feeling it in the moment what the other person's doing, I think it's important to be.
Yeah, it's a good time to exercise your emotional intelligence skills, I think, because there's been a few rooms I've been in where people have got upset with people's remarks towards their ideas, and so I think just approaching everything with kindness and and then I think a lot can be said for as well just online collaborations as well, being able to sort of work or develop the skill to be able to work over distance as well is really, really important.
Yeah, because you all do that, eh? So, I mean, that's one thing a lot of drum and bass producers are really renowned for. So, got any tricks or recommendations for approaches or apps or,
Just before we move on to that, I'm going to go back to the vocalist thing, if that's right.
Yeah, go for it, Juice.
Just one thing that we've found, because we've worked a lot with vocalists and musicians before, and Dylan, the other half of the Upbeats, plays guitar and sings on a lot of the tracks that we've done, is that quite often the way that the creative process works is that we'll have like 9 times out of 10, we'll have like a melodic core idea that we give to the vocalist that they write on and record on. And if it's one of those sessions where we go back and forth, that's great. But I think it's really important that when you get the material back, when you have a vocal to work with, don't be precious of the track that you wrote to record the vocal on. The vocal is right to. Like, almost disregard the track that you recorded the vocal to, because if the vocal's good, that is the most important thing. And the music should bring out the feeling of that vocal. That's the to me, if you have doing a vocal song, the essence of it is that the music should support and bring out the vocal as much as possible.
Yeah, I really, really, really strongly agree with that. And I think that a lot of producers that I've worked with over the years, especially younger producers, they create a song and it's like they put so much time into it. And like, don't get me wrong, I've been in this situation as well, but it's like this thing is so precious and it's been created and it's like you can't let go of that. Whereas like just be like, cool, we've got this vocal and now we've got this other idea which also still needs a vocal. Let's just write more. You can always write another one and just like chalk it up, get another vocalist or another writing session and just like treat it as a blessing rather than something that you've got to discard if it doesn't necessarily work with the original idea.
And
I think that's really, yeah.
also
Sorry, Jamie.
nothing needs to be discarded. Just take the sounds that you like from that, save them as patches, bounce the things you like as samples for yourself, like reappropriate it. Nothing is wasted time. It's all
Yes.
Everything else, it's all learning.
That's such a good statement. Nothing is wasted time. Yeah.
I think that is a massive tip, to be honest. Like, because I see it all the time. People, especially beginners, just get so attached to these ideas, and just having the skill of being able to, okay, sweet, I've got this idea. Why don't I, before I decide whether this is the direction, why don't I try and just iterate 3 different ideas, like completely different ideas, or it could be 1 or 2, and then go, actually, no, the first one was the best. But by doing that exercise, you can objectively sort of step back and choose which direction is best for the tune. And always keep asking yourself, is this the best for the tune?
And even if nothing comes from those 3 ideas, it's like the way I would phrase it is like a guitarist practicing in his room. Like it's just getting reps and just getting more comfortable with your DAW and just getting faster at doing basic stuff.
Totally.
Yeah, I think speed feeds into it as well, because I know obviously a lot of like beginners, they don't have that speed, and so creating 3 different ideas seems like a daunting task, but the more you use your DAW, the better you get at it, the faster you can get ideas down. And so you kind of just, I guess the aim of the game is just how long can you stay in flow state, and the ability to stay in flow state, you really need to learn your tools and know how to, and your workflow and curate all that. So I think that's a good tip as well.
Cool. Do you want to, guys, just want to, because we've got like 15 minutes-ish to go, talk about how to, your experiences of navigating your career as a drum and bass artist, from building your skills to approaching labels or other producer DJs to get feedback or get them to play your stuff, any of that side of things, going international with what you're doing. Who wants to chat on that first? Jeremy?
Yeah. I think I'll come back to some of those points, but one of the things that's really is a real trap for a producer is that you kind of want to explore and do all of the things and be like, oh, that song I just heard, that's another genre, is exciting. Oh, this style of drum and bass is exciting. Oh, this is exciting. But more often than not, 9 times out of 10, the people that are successful and create a career out of this are the ones that manage to like really focus on pursuing a clearly defined, like, this is the sound, that you don't know what the sound is to start with, but persevering on a path and truly exploring it. And it's easy to go like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, but generally I think to create a lasting career, you need to really create your thing, and it needs to be distinctly like you need to do. It may feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again, but that is part of what's creating your identity musically. Beyond that, I think it's not everyone obviously is social and enjoys going out and talking to people, but in terms of networking and getting to know the right people to take the time to listen to your music, actually talking to people, whether it's online, whether it's at a show, whatever it is, like creating those personal connections is a really, really important way to open doors. Like we're very lucky that we're on the other end of it at the moment. But now, I was saying to Chris when we spoke the other day, it's amazing. I'll have like almost every weekend when we play a show, I'll talk to someone in the club. They're like, yeah, I'm producing. They will tell me about what they're doing. They're like, great. I'm interested now. I love hearing new producers, particularly in New Zealand. Send me your music. And maybe 1 in 10 will follow through. Like those moments when you have someone's ear and like on the Monday or the Sunday, the day after the gig, whatever it is, while the memory of talking to you is still fresh, follow up on that stuff. Like those little moments, those little connections, those little personal moments are so valuable. You don't know which one's going to pay off, but actually acting on those things, because all it really is like a couple of little things going right, a couple of the right people at the right time hearing your music. That's what you need to happen. And so creating those opportunities is hard, but you've got to jump on them.
Yeah, we see that in the big production industry survey data that we just analysed, was the people that are active about, connecting and, with people are the most likely to have a successful long-term career. And
I mean, we've basically created a career off riding coattails of becoming friends with people and then letting us work with them in the studio and getting credited on songs that they wrote. So
whatever.
That's a running joke between Dylan and I. Anyway. Like, yeah, your relationships you can build a career off the people that you know and associate with, not only because you can leverage off them, but also you can learn off them, and having people to bounce ideas back and forth off is one of the things that'll keep you interested and engaged and excited and keep you motivated, because it is a long game to get to the point where your career starts, and so you need those people to keep you engaged and keep you excited and motivated.
What are your thoughts on that, Tom, as someone been doing it for a while? But
I think Jeremy's absolutely right, and I think I look back to like the start of my journey when we started, and we were just nightclub DJs that were just literally just playing in Auckland everywhere that we could, and we took that social networking to a next level. We really were just out there, and I think that it was how we started, growing as well. It was pretty much off connections. We were very, very poor music producers at the time. And I think...
Yeah, if you were in Auckland, you couldn't not know who these boys were.
Thank you. And I think it was just... We just slowly started to grow in that regard. And then we always just put our heads down with the music side of things. And then we slowly got in with the Georgie Femme crew, and big shout out to Jay Bulletproof, rest in peace, man. He really helped us out on his night show and got us involved, and he was a big breaker of I would say new music at the time on that station. And then I think it just snowballed from there. We just kept releasing, and we kept being friendly, and just being friendly blokes that just sort of wanted to go and listen to everyone's story, have a yarn to everybody, give people the time of day, and just keep going. I think that is literally probably like the biggest piece of advice that I can put out there, is just keep going, keep releasing. And I think once we sort of started the snowball and we'd realized the traction was kind of happening, we sort of looked at each other and we were like, Graham Matthews is who I write music with. We kind of looked at each other and we were just like, we just kind of have to keep up some form of consistency in terms of releases now. And so we pushed, and we've released like 2 studio albums now. And now we're just sort of, our kind of goal from March onwards is to pretty much do like a single a month. And we're looking pretty well stacked up to do that. And so, yeah, my advice there is be nice, be consistent, and be visible. Make yourself visible. That's probably, yeah.
Cool. Well, Elliot, what are your thoughts?
I'm definitely the most underqualified person to answer this question, because although I've been producing for a long time, it was only until I met Connor last year. Well, not met Connor, but like we started the In Motion project last year. And it's interesting because Connor would be great to answer this question, but because he's kind of taught me a lot of stuff about this. But he's been networking for as long as I have been producing, and so pretty much everyone knows Connor. And so I think when we jumped in, it was like matching a guy that was really well respected and really well liked and very well connected with a really good product in terms of like the musical output. And so the kind of harmony of those two things just opened. We kind of, every door that we've kind of gone for has been like, wow, yeah, it's kind of welcome with open arms. So I've got really, really lucky in that respect. But yeah, I would absolutely agree with what these guys have said on the networking thing. I think that's from what I can see of what we've done in the last year and sort of how Connor's been operating, since his music journey. It's absolutely the key is surrounding yourself with the right people, even with like next level production. Like surrounding, we've got George from Soon. We've got a guy really good, like our sound designer, Quinn, or produces under August, does all our sound design stuff. Like, and obviously Briggsy as well. Like, just creating this like really strong network of people that are all trying to do the same thing, that are in it for the love of the music, and it just makes it a lot more fun as well, and enjoyable with people around you, rather than doing it on your own. Sorry.
I think a good talking point as well. And to use you guys as an example, Elliot, like I think, and in terms of international success or like pushing yourself out there would be the bootlegs that you guys have done. I think that's actually worked really well for you guys recently. Getting Sub Focus in your DMs, which is so epic. And I think that can be another way to sort of, I guess, get a little bit of, I don't know, more visibility, would you say, Elliot, with those kind of bootlegs? Because they're, I guess, DJ friendly. It's something that people in the crowd are going to know. And it's an exciting sort of drum and bass flip on it. So then, people are hearing those while they're probably, at gigs or whatever. And, I don't know how Sub Focus heard that one in particular, but DJs of any, I guess, worth any salt are probably sort of out there, and they hear these tracks and they go, man, what is that? Because it has something that is familiar and recognizable, that then it's an easy way for people to kind of to get your music out there, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. It's actually quite a weird, not weird, but like wild story. Like I went, a friend of mine took me to a gig, and she was playing, so I could go in the backstage, and her manager is partners with Fred, 1991. And so we were I got to chat with Fred for about an hour, and he's a lovely guy. But we were talking. I was telling him about stuff, and he was like, "Oh, you guys played R&B," and he was like, "Oh, what did the stage look like?" And I was showing him some clips, and he pointed to one and was like, "Oh, is that the Electron edit?" That he didn't know it was us, but he's like, "Oh, is that Electron?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, that's our edit," and he was like, "Oh, I wouldn't mind that." And then he obviously downloaded that. He was touring with Worship at the time. Showed Sub Focus messaged us and was like, "Oh, I'm with Dan Nero. Do you want me to send it to him as well?" We were like, "Oh my God, what is going on? This is unbelievable." The luck from that. But just that one conversation made such a big difference for, we're on the radar of 3 massive producers,
And that's the coolest way to do it, because you weren't like, listen to my bootleg. You were just showing them videos of.
Crazy.
That's epic.
Yeah.
Something to add to that as well, something that Tom, you mentioned earlier that I've been thinking a bit about recently, and it's that because it was a long time ago, had almost forgotten about. But when you're coming up as a new, hopefully young producer, DJ, building a community, like from a purely horribly like business sense, what labels and promoters are looking for are people that have connection, people that, whether it's your social media or whether it's your clique locally that you do parties with, like people are looking for people that are connected and already have a built-in audience. So you doing regular, like whether you do a residency or you even just house parties, but you have like build up of following through that, like building a community is so valuable. And that's what everyone is looking for, is people that already have that built in, because it's almost like a no-brainer when you're looking at an artist and like, oh, okay, they've already got people that are paying attention.
Yeah, because then if you've got, this amazing community and a good product, then it's,
totally.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? And I mean, that right there kind of sounded like a sales pitch, didn't it, rather than a music yarn.
But this is it, right? We're talking about creating a career, and so you have to wear those 2 hats. You have to be somewhat business minded and also hopefully put creativity first, but also balance.
Yeah. And coming from Aotearoa, we're a long way from places, and that's a real impediment to a lot of music styles, but not so much, it looks like, drum and bass when we see the sort of success of a lot of people who are doing it. It is a lot easier for a lot of the dance styles, as we see with some of the hip hop styles, to actually connect in with all those international people. And it's not cheap.
Because drum and bass is, it's cheap because it's generally only one of you touring. It's a lot cheaper in a band. But also because it's quite a progressive genre and people are constantly looking for what sounds
fresh,
exciting, fresh. There is an appetite for it. So people want to find new people. So promoters want to find new acts that they can put that are exciting. So I think, there are opportunities there. There are a lot of other genres where that's not the case.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the nice things about drum and bass.
Nice. Cool. We're pretty much hitting time now. So, Elliot, do you want to give us, as one of the sponsors for the night, do you want to give us a quick little rundown on Next Level Production, what you guys do? And then we can draw, what have we got for prizes? What are you guys giving? Did you get
We've got a couple of sample packs. I mean, you can tell me what you want, but we've got, we've only got three out. We've got one in the works as well, but they're 2 bass preset, sort of heavy bass preset sample packs with, I think there's about 25, 30 sounds in each one, and we've just most recently put out a drum sample pack, which I think is awesome. Lots of like high production, if you like your Mephius, Camo and Crooked sort of stuff, there's lots of nice snares in there and loops and stuff like that.
Sweet. Cool. So just got a message through from Huia on our winners, and the first winner, we'll do 2. So and if you can just email info@mpgnz.co.nz, and we'll get you connected with the Next Level guys to get your download, your discount code, whatever. So the first winner is Jeremy B. So round of applause for Jeremy.
Nice.
Yep. And the second winner is Plastic. So there you go. 2 people with some new packs. We'll get them in contact with you. Any last little bits you want to say, or before we sign off from everyone? If you guys just stay on for a moment after we close the stream, let's say goodbye. But anyone got any last little things they want to say?
Nah, thanks for listening, everyone. It was great and lovely to chat, fellas.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great to have you on. I love this.
Cool. Thank you very much. The next MPG one we're going to be doing is on guitar production. Then we've got one on drum production, and then we're doing a reggae one. And plan is to do a few more dance music ones as well. We'll slot them all in as we get a chance. But thanks everyone, and we're gonna log off.